Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Rafael Gutierrez, and today I wanted to try something different. I do have everything written out in a PowerPoint presentation, but my goal is not to actually say everything that's on every slide, but rather use it as a guide to show how you can actually use this. Now, one of my big goals was to try to take a kata most people don't really pay attention to and see if it could be made in a way that it could be interpreted using the philosophy of Ikken Hissatsu, the idea that one punch could end a fight, and use clinical data to back it up. Now, to do this, I felt that there's a lot of things I needed to do, and one of the first ones is to actually explain what I'm talking about. So, in this, what I wanted to do is align the kata with the philosophy and using medical insights to identify injuries that can be caused by normal forces or low impact falls. Meaning, I want something that a human body could actually produce, whether it's a elite athlete or not. It's just something that could be done that would potentially cause the injury that we would see in Ikken Hissatsu. Now, a lot of these, you can actually try it with someone who is unwilling, but you have to actually modify to do it slower rather than a fast, sudden jerk. The other way that you could actually test this is by human cadavers, which are extremely expensive. And so I'm not going to do those. Now, what I actually do mean is this. So a lot of us talk about how karate should be Ikken Hissatsu, but there's really no real data that actually is looking at how does this injury occur and how would it occur intentionally. Now, one of the things that we found is that most martial art injuries actually don't occur in competitions; they actually occur in training, and that's that Bacon et al.'s article, which I will paste at the end. And it pretty much is telling us that most of the injuries that happen not when you're actually trying to compete, when you have certain rules, but actually when you're just really trying to learn the stuff yourself. Now, one of the problems that does happen with this is that a lot of times people deal with anecdotal evidence. This worked once upon a time because of a story I once heard, or it worked in a sport, or you know, uh, it may work because of X, Y, and Z. And the thing is, when we're dealing with self defense, we need something that's real world scenario uh, and functions based on what we have available. Bowman actually uh, wrote an article about how infrequent most of the injuries are in tournament compared to in training, and it makes it really difficult to deal with stuff as concrete when dealing with self defense. And so here I wanted to evaluate the kata techniques using that Ikken Hissatsu. And I decided to use Shorinru's version of Pinan Nidan because it seems to be one of the most used katas. For instance, in Shotokan, it's a Heian Shodan. In Tang Sudo, it's Piang Shodan. And so, as it's used so relative, I figured it'd be one that everyone can see. The other thing is, it's considered a introduction level kata. A lot of people think it doesn't have anything that would be dangerous. And what I actually also wanted to do is wanted to show that what we believe is dangerous may not necessarily be. I'm sorry, what we believe is safe may not necessarily be safe all the time, depending on the knowledge you already have. And so this aim is really just the aim of this is really looking at could we use a kata and use the philosophy that we say the martial art encompasses to see if that actually works. And if it does, could this actually help us understand if some of these old legends actually occurred? And so the first thing is what are we going to deal with as Ikken Hissatsu? Now a lot of people say, well, it's a killing blow, and I tend to disagree. I think it would be any blow that would make a further attack end for any reason. And to identify these, what I actually did is I went to peer reviewed medical journals for case studies where normal body forces cause the injuries and required medical attention. And so that's what I'm using for that. As I mentioned, the Pinan Nidan, as described by Shoshu Nagamine, was used because, first, it's a simple kata, it's an introduction kata, and most people do not see it as a potential for Ikken Hissatsu. People tend to look at it as well. This is just the way we use it because of how it gives us a proper body dynamics. And so that's actually what I wanted to do. I also wanted to make sure that when applicable, I could use data that actually shows us and the reasoning for why I use that in particular movement. Now, it does help to actually put the Pinans in a historic perspective. A lot of times people talk about, well, uh, it was made for students, and so how can it be dangerous? And if we put it in the perspective, we actually can see that Itosu was a well-educated individual. He actually had uh, training in Chinese classics. He had a prestigious position in the Ryukyu Kingdom, and when it was dissolved, he kind of found himself without a job. So what we end up having is he ended up kind of retiring, but at the same time, we also noticed that during the annexation, during the Sino-Japanese War, we did see that a lot of his students did end up passing the military examinations. Two of them went on to serve in the Sino-Japanese War and the Russo-Japanese War, and so actually even getting as high as first lieutenant. And so it may be that he actually decided to see what worked for those students and modify the kata, make a kata that would help people get physically ready for military service. I cannot say specifically how this actually influenced everything, but it is interesting to know that the Boxers' Rebellion occurred about the same time, back before the Pinan Katas were created. And so I feel it's worth noting that because what you're dealing with is you're dealing with a rebellion named after Chinese martial artists, and why they would actually want to look at martial arts to train may have actually had something to do with that. I also think it's important for us to look at the 10 precepts of or lessons of karate, which Itosu himself wrote. And one of the big things he actually wrote was that karate consists of many techniques and corresponding meanings. You should strive to explore these techniques independently. Using the theory of usage and their practical applications will become clearer. In the case that we're actually dealing with this, we're actually going to use Ikken Hissatsu as the theory of usage and see if the medical clinical anatomy can actually make it seem more clear. Again, I'm actually defining Ikken Hissatsu as just something that would cause an attack to end either because of being disabling, making it difficult for the attack to continue. And this is actually has to be done using the techniques of the kata, and it has to actually be done as a defensive, not aggressive mode, meaning there has to be some sort of a block and then the counter actually strikes. Now, the difficulty of this is actually that really not many people are doing this. And again, one of the things I noticed is there were a lot of research trying to figure out how things actually work, and one of them was through the military combatives uh, injury tracking program that ran from 2005 to 2009, and the patients that met the criteria for injury were referred to primary care or orthopedic clinics. And during that period, you had about 1,000 soldiers who were treated. Uh, 15% were injuries severe enough to impact their duties. 33% of these cases were upper extremities. And one of the interesting things is these were actually accidental. One other thing to notice as these, besides the fact that these were actually accidents that occurred during training and not intentional, it also is important to notice that most of these occurred from kneeling positions and in times where strikes to the head in particular are prohibited, which means that some of the stuff may not actually be seen as we would. And so, with that, I am going to talk next time on the sites of injury that I came out with, and then I will review the kata. I hope you enjoy this and have a nice day.